And today we are going to dive into spirituality. And a lot of people come to us, they want to be spiritual coaches. They want to help people in a spiritual way. Actually, I think that's how I started. I love personal development. I love spirituality. I loved studying, energy and chakras and all those things. And I wanted to be more of a spiritual coach, but I ended up being a hypnotherapist, first of all, and helping people lose weight and quit smoking, and I felt like it was more practical than spirituality. But I realized the more I worked is that you really are working with someone's soul when you're working with them. Mm-hmm. And to really truly have a transformation, we have to understand the spiritual aspects of a person. You can help them change their thinking. You can help them, make better decisions as a coach. But if you want to really help someone, you help them understand who they are, not just the ego, that they're not just the ego. And so our work we're going to go over today is our philosophy of spiritual philosophy. We're going to talk about manifestation and what that really means and how coaches have gotten into that. I want to help you manifest and how it really works from a psychological and spiritual perspective, and a little bit more about how you can become a more spiritual person and live a more spiritual life. So let's start with, what is our philosophy, Rob? What is how do we see the world? What is our worldview? It's so important. The foundation, if you're going to do any work with someone, you have to understand what they believe about what's possible, what their spiritual beliefs are. That was probably one of the first questions I ask every client since the beginning is, what do you believe? Are you Catholic? Are you Muslim? Do you believe in New Age? What is your belief system, the universe? And that really kind of sets the stage for everything else you do with that person, because you're working with that paradigm.
Yeah, that's true. But in a way, belief is only part of the story.
Yes, absolutely.
What we believe often is adaptive.
Mm-hmm.
It's been given to us.
We're told what to believe, basically.
Yeah, it's been given to us by our environment, our circumstances, our culture, mm-hmm. our history, our personal history, like Jung says. But we want to get to the point where we know.
Yes.
Like, what is it that we know, not believe?
So a direct experience.
A direct experience of our mind, of our psyche, of our spirit, our soul.
Carl Jung, famously, they asked him, do you believe in God? And he said, believe? No, I know. And that's really what you want. If you're going to be a spiritual coach or do any spiritual work, you want to have that direct experience, not just an intellectual experience or a belief that I believe that, everything's about changing your belief. I believe that anything's possible. What if you know anything's possible? It's this huge shift in your paradigm and how you create your life. Because if you just believe, it's more of a hope and a prayer versus that knowing. It changes everything. It changes your willingness to step out more, to create more in your life.
There's three things that we teach all our clients and all our trainees, whatever specialty they want to go into in the coaching. One is that there's a philosophy that underlies this process. And that philosophy comes from Vedanta, mm-hmm. which are essentially the Upanishads, the philosophy of the Upanishads. The second one is that there's a personal transformational psychology based on the Jungian model. Mm-hmm. And then thirdly, that there is this mindset of how to apply these deeper philosophical and psychological perspectives in a practical way in the world, as a coach, as an entrepreneur. So the basic one, the philosophical foundation, essentially teaches us that we are living in a conscious universe. And science is catching up with this perspective. Even in Nature and Science magazine recently, there was a couple of articles that talked about how we can no longer speak of a material universe the way we conceived of it in Newtonian and Einstein theory. Mm-hmm. we are actually living in a conscious universe that means it's a living process.
Mm-hmm.
It's a psyche basically that we're living in. And that changes the whole paradigm of, when you were talking about manifesting or spiritual work, it changes the whole idea because now spirituality is not separate from the way we experience the material world. The material world is our spirituality.
So, the self-help movement actually exploded back in 2003, 2005, I guess that was when The Secret came out. And so it became this phenomenon that your thoughts create your life. And even there's a movie now called The Secret, which we watched like the preview. And I was like, oh my God, he's like, it's like a magnet. Your mind attracts things. And that is actually incorrect according to the conscious universe paradigm. In the material universe, sure, yeah, you're separate from everything. And in Vedanta, it's the conscious universe, meaning that everything is you, everything is a part of you. So imagine your life in just that idea that it's not out there. Like you have all the power of the universe within you. That idea, we could say it, you believe in potential and everything can happen. But when you put it to work, like that mindset of I'm going to visualize and attract something, what we end up doing is doubting because it's not showing up, and we don't know that this is all part of our plan. And I think that what happened in the industry is that all these spiritual coaches are telling you how to manifest things. And with the West, we're very consumer based. We want to get stuff. We want to find love. We want to, all those things that we want, but we end up losing the gift of understanding this higher knowledge of, yes, in a way, we are who we are is our experience in life, but the mechanism is not, you're attracting it from externally. And I love this. I just saw this video the other day and I thought it was so perfect. So imagine that you are out there, you're single, you're looking for a partner, but all of a sudden you inherit $1 billion and some long lost aunt that you didn't know gave you $1 billion and you're like so wealthy. And then you finally meet your partner, and you get married and you're so happy. And then all of a sudden there was a mistake and they were like, you know what? That $1 billion isn't yours. And they take it all away. And then your partner says, yeah, it was nice to know you, but I'm going to leave. How would you feel? You would feel used. You would feel as though that partner was using you for the money. Now imagine you asking the universe or asking God or asking the divine for something. Wouldn't the divine feel a little used that you're just kind of like asking for stuff? And instead of like getting to know the divine in a way that's more profound and more deep and more meaningful than just, what can you do for me? And so I know it's kind of a shocking example, but that's kind of what we do. And we don't even realize we're doing it. It's like, there's a lot of people that talk about this, that God is only around when you're in trouble. Like when you're in trouble, that's when we seek God. And in a way, it's true. We should seek the divine when we're in trouble, because that's really what's going to give us the answers to everything. So, but we want to approach spirituality in the right way. We don't want to use it as a tool for manifesting material things. We want to use the things that we want to become more spiritual, not the other way around, not to become more spiritual to get more things.
Yeah, that's a good point. In the Upanishads, it starts out with this understanding that as we become these bodies, as we incarnate, we become confused. Like we forget, where did we originate from? Because the seductive beauty of the world is just so colorful, so there, it's like it feels so real in a material sense. But it says that our task, the whole aim of human life, is to get back to that pure awareness, to that true understanding that everything is arising from consciousness, from this primordial consciousness that creates us and creates the world, the universe. And that when as you move towards that realization, you're realizing that it's you. At the heart of you, what we call the soul, is that consciousness. That
it's who you really are.
It's who you really are. It's never been anything else. And that the whole manifested universe is essentially very much like a dream. It's arising and you're experiencing it. In other words, the experience is real. You're experiencing it, but the way it exists is dreamlike. It's an appearance. It's a manifestation. It's an experience.
You know, it's interesting that that knowledge of understanding, that direct knowledge. There are many things in my life that I want to create that I haven't created yet. And there are many things on the journey to creating our business and meeting you and all those things that I wanted to have. And I used to think, well, when I have those things, I can find peace. I could relax. You know, when I finally get that book deal, when I finally find that soulmate, when I finally have a business that I can leave my corporate job for, then I'll be happy. And what I realized is through this work that everything that you create becomes secondary, and the primary goal becomes, how do I know I want to see who I really am. I want to see what I'm made of. I want to understand myself. And there's something, what you just said, that was so profound for me, is that when I realized that I'm the true nature of reality, just understanding that and having that, not intellectually, but having a direct experience of it, which is when I don't get all the things I want, actually gives me the opportunity to realize it. All of a sudden, I have that happiness and joy that I think those other material things will give me. There's nothing, it's greater than meeting you and having a great relationship. It's greater than having a successful business. It's greater than traveling the world and seeing amazing things and being able to do the work I love. The real goal is this connection to who you are. And I just feel that people miss out. Like you're trading something small for gold. It's like you're trading dirt for gold. It's really, really backwards. I think a lot of the consumerism of the coaching industry, that it's turned out to be this: hire someone and they'll help you manifest more money, which is great. You could manifest more money, but is that really going to bring you true happiness? It's not going to. And I've seen so many coaches, like I've talked to them on the phone, interested in our work. And a lot of them are stressed out because they don't have that deeper knowledge. And they're worried about, now that they have the business, are they making the clients happy? And are they getting the clients the results they want? And this work actually helps you understand that whatever struggle your client is going through, that you could be the rock for them, truly. And your ego's not attached to helping them manifest. You're actually the rock. You're the guru, true guru. You're the one who's the calm, guiding center. And that, I think, is the beautiful thing about this work.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about Jung a little bit. But let's say first, I wanted to just touch on how the Upanishads play into all this. So for those of you not familiar with the Upanishads, they're thousands of years old. They're not really sure how old they are, but they at least go back 3,000 years, the written stuff, and then orally they, even further. But I wanted to give you a glimpse or a sample of what is in there. So one of my favorites is called the Mandukya Upanishad, and it starts out something like this. It's a pupil asking a teacher, what is the one thing that knowing I will know everything else.
Mm.
Like, what is the one thing that will explain to me what everything is, what my mind is, what reality is, what success is, what love is, everything. That kind of philosophical question, I mean, if you think about how powerful that is, people were thinking about these things in ancient times, and they were discovering it directly through, without microscopes, without telescopes, without the scientific method, by introspection, by looking inward through meditation, understanding their own psyche. So the answer to that is simple. It says, if you understand consciousness and that everything is arising from consciousness, you will understand everything, right? Because there's nothing outside of it. There's nothing that cannot be accounted for by understanding the principle of that primal awareness. So then we get to Jung, and Jung is saying, if you look at human history, that need to know what is the nature of reality and what is the nature of my mind.
And who am I? The question of who am I and what happens after I die? Like, is there afterlife? And, I see people around me dying. Like, what happens?
Right. He says that is a primal human need. You cannot get rid of it just simply because you invent some gadgets and you say, well, we have computers now that can explain things, or we know about evolution and the solar system. That he says that's not going to get rid of that need.
It's almost like something you can't read in a book, or it can be explained in a book. It's something you have to contemplate to become aware of. It's not like you could study, like you could read the Upanishads and you could read the Gita a million times. And it's not going to actually, the words aren't going to give you the answer. It's the contemplation of the words that gives you the answer.
That's right. And it's not this, there's two types of knowledge in the Upanishads. The knowledge of the external world is a lower knowledge. It doesn't, not lower.
Science and biology and.
Yeah, exactly. Like how do plants grow? How do things move? How does the weather work? Even
psychology, like how do people get programmed, and how does the brain work, and why do we have defenses and all those things?
And what's interesting is that it says even the scriptures themselves, meaning the Upanishads, is lower knowledge because it's simply encoded in words, and you can read it. Anyone can read it. It says higher knowledge is a direct experience of what your true self is. So that's the distinction. Any information that we have, and we have a lot of information now as human beings, we have a gluttony of information now, is all lower knowledge. It doesn't instruct us on what is your mind and what is the nature of reality. It simply tells us, about things. So
like the idea of non-attachment, I know I have to be non-attached. It's very common, but what does that really mean? And why are we like, it's almost like I'm not going to be attached, but then people confuse that, just as an example, people confuse that with, I don't care. I'm not going to care about the result, or I'm giving up the result. And I just want to be non-attached, and whatever God or the universe shows me. But that's actually the wrong way to approach it. Well, there's no right or wrong, but it's like not what the higher knowledge is intended for. So that would be an example, something like that. Forgive your neighbor. What does that mean? What does that really mean? Why do we have to do that?
Yeah, the higher knowledge comes into play when you have that direct experience. It becomes then a living knowledge, like it activates your psyche. And that's what Jung was talking about in his psychology. He's saying you have to get in touch with your unconscious mind. And he had this concept of the collective unconscious.
There was the personal, which Freud and everyone agreed there's some kind of subconscious, not, well, the people that believe in dynamic or depth psychology. But Freud believed it stopped at there. You know, we're just a product of our past experiences, and that's all we are. And when we die, that goes away, and nothing happens because he was more of an atheist, right?
Yeah, all psychology basically agrees on the unconscious mind, on the personal. Even if you're a neurobiologist, you essentially see that the brain is doing most of its work automatically. Mm-hmm. You're not conscious, for example, of your breathing and your blood pressure. It's doing all that unconsciously.
But it's not all psychologies address the unconscious. They kind of address they think the moving, changing behavior could change the pattern, right? They're not really going into.
Yeah, I would say behaviorism, the pure radical behaviorists do not want to look at the mind at all. Mm-hmm. They say, well, if you can't observe it, what's the point? Mm. But that's a very few. Most of psychology agrees that there is a personal unconscious going on. The difference in the Jungian model is that he says there's a collective unconscious that connects us to the total history of humankind. Mm. So if you look at, well, why do the same ideas arise in different cultures and different times all over the planet? Mm-hmm. He says, because we're all dipping into that collective unconscious, and many of the same ideas, the serpent, the dragon,
it's the archetypes the mother, he talked about.
That's right. So those become the central archetypes that feed humanity's mythologies, our religious ideas around the world. Mm-hmm. They all arise from one source.
There's always the divine child, the sacred child, the rebirth. Mm-hmm. There's rituals, about the fire and rebirth,
transformation. Mm-hmm. All our
alchemy.
Yes, all our these archetypal elements that are rising from the collective unconscious.
Well, even simply, like if we think about the pattern of the mother archetype, like everyone has a mother. So we're all kind of falling into that pattern in family units. Like even with animals, they have the mother, the father, the children, like kind of like we just think that's just the way it is. But there's an archetypal pattern. It's like the Matrix that from that movie, they talk about the Matrix. That's kind of the idea, is that there's this deeper part of ourselves that's beyond the personal. That's why they call it transpersonal psychology, the Jungian. And if we just think we're just the person, we're really just working on our ego level. We're just kind of like making our ego a little better. But Jung gives us this more spiritual, bigger spiritual dimension to our connection to the universe. Everything, the stars, the planets, everything is within us, which is a powerful concept.
Yeah, that is essentially why it is a spiritual psychology. Mm-hmm. It is the
he's the first spiritual psychologist.
Yeah. And then his idea was simply this, that if we neglect, as human beings, if we neglect that part of our psyche, which is really the essence of it, and we just focus on the external ego psychology, we're going to miss out on really what is the nature of our mind? What is our purpose on earth as human beings? It's not simply to make progress like we think at the ego level, that we need to invent better machines, better programs, better computers, and move ahead. Mm-hmm. He says, if you operate from that perspective, the shadow will always be building up, the collective shadow.
Yeah.
And throw a monkey wrench in the process somehow. And you will be surprised. You will think, well, what went wrong? We were so focused on building progress and this incredible utopian society, but the shadow elements will always be building up and will play out eventually.
It's like a country that plays the hero of the world becomes the villain of the world, and the dark and the light and how it plays out. Yeah. But also in the archetypes, I find that masculine and feminine, and understanding that about ourselves in a more collective way, not just as, like a lot of people talk about masculine and feminine, balancing those energies out, but more on an ego level. Like, how do I become more logical and more instead of or less logical and more creative, and those kind of things are nice to balance out the personal psyche. But we have these beautiful other parts of our masculine and feminine that are transpersonal, that are the force of spirit of the universe, and the creativity and innovation and imagination of the universe that we can gather if we go beyond just the personal. That's the difference between Jungian coaching and most coaching out there, is that there's a lot of them are just working on the personal level. And now, of course, you have to work on the personal level before you get to the transpersonal, or you're just bypassing your personal stuff. But it's not fixing the personal. It's understanding your psyche and how it's working and balancing you out from early on, and then taking that and then now being able to create something more in your life. It's like completing the old programming and saying, let me just kind of now see myself beyond that little ego. So it really is a fascinating process. And I wanted to talk about dreams, because I feel like for me, the dreams are showing us or giving us a direct experience of the divine nature, because I would struggle with something, a problem, and I would have a dream about it. And it was almost as if God was speaking to me. Like, I would be like, what a amazing, beyond like the surface persona Debbie, that there's this energy that's giving me insight and information of where I'm at and reflecting back to me. For me, that is understanding your dreams and being able to connect it to your personal everyday experience. To me, is a direct experience of our divine nature, because where did that information come from? It's not my conscious mind figuring things out. It's something deeper, some wisdom within me that is giving me something, and to be in communication with that wisdom. That's why I think, the dream work is really fascinating.
It is, and it's great to see that people that come to the work with no previous experience of dream work. Sometimes they say, I never even thought about my dreams. I don't even dream, or they believe they don't even dream, right? And then all of a sudden, they get in touch with this unconscious in them, and it kind of comes alive and begins to give them these incredibly archetypal dreams, very mythological, very colorful, very creative. And there you see what Jung was talking about. He says, individuation is a natural process in us. We're designed for it. If you look at what is a bird designed for, it's designed for flight. It doesn't have to try to fly. It simply fits into the air perfectly. What are we designed for? We're designed for this kind of marveling at the beauty and depth of the universe, how conscious it is, how creation is, it's itself alive and symbolic. He calls it the symbolic life.
When you're talking about that, it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that we cheapen spiritual work by just trying to manifest things, when what you just said is so poetic and beautiful. And that's really, like I said, the gold. Like, we're trading dirt for gold. We're getting beyond, and that does include having great relationships and wealth and abundance. There's nothing wrong with having money and wealth and being famous or reaching lots of people and changing the world through your work, writing books. All those things are an expression of that. But the real gold is knowing who you are. And that is just, that's the $1 million prize. That no one can take that away.
No, absolutely.
And to be able to share that with others, to be able to see them as their potential, to not fall into, they're not getting the work, they're not getting what they want, and being stressed out as a coach, needing to help the client reach their goal and feeling like you're responsible. You're able to look at everything that's showing up and saying, wow, okay, I know how to work. A good example of this is, if you're a child, you're a parent and you have a little
Mm.
boy and he says he's 3 or 4 years old and he says, I want a race car. You wouldn't give him the race car. You would be like, no, you're going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt other people. You don't know how to drive it. You haven't developed enough to be able to handle that. It's the same thing with what we desire in life. We have these great desires for love and success and connection and great relationships, children, like all the things that we want to experience as a human. But we have to mature and become the person that can handle those things. Otherwise, if we are just the ego, the relationships will never be satisfying. The success will be working too hard and stressing out. The money will never satisfy you. You'll get sick. Like it's just not going to fulfill you. And so what I believe is that, and maybe you agree too, is that when you ask for something,
Maybe.
the thing that shows up for you initially is the challenge. Is like, if you ask God or the divine for something, I want a relationship. I want to have a great business. I want to change my career and become a coach. So the initial thing that the divine will give you is the challenge, not the thing. It's the challenge to help you get through the thing. But most of us see the challenge and go, oops, I guess I'm not getting what I want. Let me just meditate harder and, clear my chakras again. And hopefully I'll get it, versus the challenge is right there. It's right there. And it's what the divine has given you, like on a silver platter. This is your goal. This is your project. And if you do this project, it's going to lead you to that thing. So if I would have just asked for a relationship at 23, when I was like trying to create thinking positive and read my first self-help book, I wasn't ready for the relationship I truly wanted. And I probably would have ended up with a terrible marriage and divorce and, all these things that happen. I feel so blessed that it was like pulled from me. So I had to keep going deeper to figure out who I needed and what kind of relationship I really wanted. I didn't even know what I wanted. And so we often have a childlike attitude when it comes to this. I want to create my life, but we don't know why we want it. And we don't know what really is good for us, just like a little kid. So we have to mature spiritually to have that.
Yeah, there is this sense that we incarnate to work things out. So some of those ideas that we've heard in, let's say, in religion or the New Age movement, there is something to that. But again, we have to find a way, and for us, it's this way of working, right? We're very personal, working with our own mind and kind of in our own situation, that the way to work it out, the way to reach enlightenment is not by running off and trying to escape our mundane situations. On the contrary, it's the ability to move towards these things that present a challenge to us.
It's going through them, not around them, or not clearing them, getting rid of them. It's like, I want to clear my blocks. No, you want to embrace your blocks. You want to say, what's in here? This is where the gold is. This is what's going to bring me to the promised land.
Yeah.
Not getting rid of it and clearing. It's not like, I heard someone say this. I think it was one of the gurus. You're trying to bulldoze your way through to get what you want. You just want to bulldoze through it versus work it out. And through that working, that's where you actually get the insight or the inspiration or the transformation that will give you what you need.
Yeah. In that sense, then our work is very practical. It's not just philosophical.
Not like, oh, I'm the divine self and I'm connected to everything,
right,
and I'm going to meditate on that.
It's simply what has arisen for me, what is around me, what triggers me, what kind of dreams am I having, and all these very immediate experiences are giving us the answer. They're pointing the way to what our work is about. And if we're willing to stay with these things and embrace them, they transform our life. They
see them as a gift.
Yeah.
Like, so many of my clients, recently I had two clients that had very, very tough experiences happen to them and a challenge that they went through. And they both were freaking out and wanting to, like, why did this happen? You know, like that kind of like feeling powerless. And, but under me understanding that knowledge as a coach, I was able to say, let's dig in here. What's this about versus how do you just think positive and change it? No, let's see what this is about. Let's go deeper into this. What is it? Why did this show up? Because there's a reason why something shows up like this. And each one of them, I mean, actually, it's so funny. They both were going through it at the same time, but two different problems, one love and one work. And they both got to this week. I mean, it was just a few weeks of a great realization, self-realization that they couldn't have had by reading a book or understanding it just by hearing us talk. They had to face this challenge. It's like the divine gives us the challenge. Embrace the challenge, because in that challenge is what's going to give you the ultimate goal. But if you're a coach and you're going freaking out because the person's having challenges, which I did when I first started, I would panic when someone wouldn't have a result or they would be upset, and I would feel like I have to fix them. It's my responsibility. They paid me as a coach. I need to solve their problems. And then what happened is that created such a burden on me to solve everyone's problems. That's not what coaching is about. Coaching is having that higher knowledge and being able to, you're transmitting it through not freaking out. When the client is freaking out, it's like it's like you're opening up that part of their conscious mind to expand, to transmit what they already know, but it's like opening the door for them. You know, it's a kind of a way to explain it. You're opening the door and letting them not freak out. Like you're giving them that permission to go toward it. And it's a beautiful thing. And it saves years and years of coaching by having them just go through it instead of, it keeps happening, I'm going to get rid of the symptoms again and try it again. And then it happens again. It's like, go deep with it. And that's what's going to transform you. Go where you fear to go. Joseph Campbell says, the cave you fear to enter contains the treasure that you seek.
Yes. And some of our coaches ask us, well, you know, would I be able to have all the answers for my clients?
Yes, yeah.
And really the process is not about giving the client the answer, because we really can't. The answer has to come from within them. This kind of this type of coaching is more about understanding the principle of individuation, that the client's own psyche is ready to go through a transformation. All we're doing is helping them go through the process.
It's not like we're holding the mind where they're going, and it's like pulling them there. It is a very powerful process to have a Jungian coach who has the higher knowledge. You will get better results because you are going to get more than just a quick fix. You know, let me get more dates, or let me get, manifest a husband. We want to say, I want to have the ultimate extraordinary relationship. I want to have the job that fulfills me. And even a company that I love. I see so many people that are entrepreneurs that they're not doing what they love. They're doing it to make money, but they're not, because they can't go back to the corporate world, but they just haven't found what their purpose is. So they're kind of working really hard and they're right back in another job and not really connecting to their deeper self in what they do. So they're chasing the money. I see so many business coaches that want to teach spirituality, but they see, all the business coaches are making money, so I'm going to do that. It'll be easier. And then they cut off, and then I could see them going back after a while. A couple of years later, they're going, I really want to teach mindset. I want to teach deeper work. I don't want to teach marketing anymore. That's not what I got into this for. And so the industry can be very seductive that way, where it feels that, that would be the easiest way. Or it's also seductive of being the advice giver you know, because it's simple. It's think positive and, you know, you change your behavior. And those are very easy concepts. Being a Jungian coach, you're going to be a very small category of not having a lot of competition, because not everyone goes to that depth, and you're going to stand out. You're going to hear, people are going to hear you and say, there's something different about what this person's saying. You probably think that about us too. Like there's something different. It's a different perspective. You don't want to be a cookie cutter coach. You don't want to be just like everyone else doing law of attraction, think positive, manifestation. You want to be someone who facilitates a transformation on a real deep level. And I think an also thing we should talk about too is that it's not about healing or fixing yourself.
Yeah.
It's a wound. There's a lot of woundedness and, you know, kind of like therapy, you know, spiritual work. It's like, oh, it's my karma from past lives and I got to deal with all this stuff. And it's like, it's really heavy. I remember I used to go to those workshops when I lived in Colorado, and I'd just be like exhausted afterwards because everyone was crying and people are upset and they're, you know, reliving their past over and over. And it just seems not very productive to me.
Yeah, I think coaching borrow a lot, especially early on, from the encounter groups, from psychology, from the medical model. And so it kind of built in this idea that you have to make people believe that they're broken somehow. So
they'll buy your stuff.
Yeah, that they need you to provide the medicine, the answer for them. And it's okay as a metaphor, because even the Buddha, I think, used the idea of, you know, I'm like a physician.
Yeah.
But he was saying it as a metaphor, right? That, yeah, as a physician, I'm going to give you kind of the remedy, the prescription that you need. But it's gotten so out of hand that people really believe that there's something wrong with them.
It's just not like they're the only ones. They had something happen to them and they're like separated from society, where everyone else is, you know, has perfect minds. And I had this trauma, so I am broken and I'm different than everyone else. And like you, I remember when I first met you, you were working with the kids that were diagnosed with autism. And you were saying that everything changed when they got that diagnosis. It was almost
Very
like the people around them looked at them differently. And then the child felt that way. So how can you live your full potential when your teacher is telling you you're broken and wounded, and I can fix you? Then there's something really like, how much potential can you really have?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've pretty much outgrown that model, and it's time to move on. And to really incorporate the higher knowledge that we have from Eastern wisdom traditions, as well as from current neuroscience, that shows us if you're alive and you've made it to this point, there's nothing wrong with you. On the contrary, you're a powerful person because you have a healthy mind. Yeah, you've a healthy mind that's protected you and helped you get to this point.
And we talk about that. It's not what we're not working with is the event that happened. We're just kind of dealing with the aftermath, which is how our mind protected us. Yeah. So these things that we call blocks are actually what actually protected us. So the reason why there's such resistance to letting them go is because the ego says, well, this protected you. I'm not letting this go. And we all have it, no matter if you had the Brady Bunch family or the perfect parents and that gave you all the personal support, or someone who is terrible and awful. We all have that something that we're dealing with. We're all humans. We all have it. And there are people that have it tougher than others and how to.
Oh, absolutely.
But I always find that those people are more the seekers than anyone, you know, because they're like, you know what, I feel like they're the most motivated to ask those questions. It doesn't make that something wrong with you. Like even for me, like I for years, I thought I had such a terrible childhood and, you know, that's why I'm single. And, you know, I was angry at my father because all these people were telling me, you know, he was, you know, not a good father. And this is what good fathers do. And, you know, I got to the point, it was actually in hypnotherapy school when they asked me like write down like all the things about your father that he did for you, right? And I said, wow, no one's ever asked me that. And I thought about all the goodness he was. And all of a sudden, my perspective started changing. Like, why am I healing that? Like, he's a good man. He wasn't perfect, but he was a good man. And so we have the people around us are always doing their best. And when I understood a little more about what made him tick, what made my mother tick, how it was passed down from generation to generation, this conditioning, that our parents don't mean to hurt us. Even the worst parent, they're acting out of conditioning. So it doesn't get them off the hook, but it's like being mad at a child for writing on the wall. It's the child didn't know any better. And so we're the generation that can change that. We're the generation that can wake up and stop the pattern from continuing to our children and to our grandchildren and all that.
Yeah.
So it's very important to do this work, but it's also important not to judge and let go of that. Like, there's something terrible about me, and that's why that happened. There's something wrong with me. That's why this happened to me.
Yeah. And when you consider the higher knowledge in the Upanishads, for example, what it's teaching us is that what we call the ego is not even real. Mm-hmm. It's a construct that the mind creates, so amazing, right? To give us that sense of I, right? That personal I. But in reality, it's only a function of the mind. The essence of the mind, the true self, is much deeper. It's what Jung called the self. And the self it emerges as you do the process of individuation.